The morning started like any other for Daniel Reeves. He woke early, stepped onto the wooden deck of his beach house, and breathed in the clean, salty air that he had come to treasure. This place was his escape, a world away from the noise and expectations of his family. The waves rolled in steady, brushing against the sand in quiet rhythms that always eased his mind. He planned to spend the day finishing a project he'd been working on, maybe take a long walk, maybe cook something simple for dinner. It was supposed to be a peaceful day. But peace rarely lasted long for Daniel. His phone buzzed with a message from a neighbor, Mrs. Alton, who watched everything that happened on the street with the sharp eyes of someone with very little else to do. Normally, her messages were harmless notes about a stray raccoon, a delivered package, or a weather warning. But the photo she sent this time hit Daniel with the force of a wave slamming into a cliff. The picture showed a moving truck in his driveway, not just parked opened, half empty, with boxes being carried toward his front door. And the people carrying them were not strangers. They were his own family. His sister, Mia, her husband, Greg, their teenage son, Evan. They were moving into his beach house. For a few long seconds, Daniel didn't move. His breath caught, his chest tightened, and all the calm he had felt moments ago shattered. He stared at the photo again to make sure he wasn't imagining it. But there was Mia, in her bright blue jacket, balancing a box on her hip. There was Greg, lifting a suitcase. There was Evan, dragging a chair across the sand like he'd done it 1,000 times before. They didn't ask. They didn't warn him. They didn't explain. They just moved in. The betrayal was instant and sharp. Not loud, not violent, just a heavy, crushing realization that the people he trusted most believed they could walk into his life and take what they wanted. He felt anger rise, but beneath it was an old sadness, the same sadness he'd felt for most of his adult life. A sadness that came from being the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who always said yes. Daniel had spent years helping his family. When Mia struggled in college, he helped pay her rent. When Greg lost his job, Daniel loaned him money. When Evan needed a computer for school, Daniel bought it. He never made a scene, never kept score, never asked to be repaid. He did it because it felt right, because he cared, because family was supposed to help family. But somewhere along the way, help had turned into expectation, and expectation had turned into entitlement. Daniel grabbed his keys, skipped breakfast, and headed straight for the driveway. It was a 15-minute trip winding along the coast, but today it felt like it stretched forever. His mind raced with questions and memories, moments when Mia brushed off his attempts to set boundaries. Moments when Greg made jokes about Daniel being the rich one. Moments when Evan called the beach house our vacation spot, even though Daniel had never invited them to stay more than a weekend. By the time he reached the house, he wasn't just upset. He was hurt. Deeply. The moving truck sat exactly where the photo showed it. Boxes were scattered around the entrance. The front door was wide open. He could see shadows moving inside. The sound of furniture scraping across the wooden floor made his skin crawl. He stepped through the doorway and found Mia in the living room, hands on her hips, scanning the space like a designer planning a remodel. She looked up and smiled, as if nothing unusual was happening, as if she hadn't crossed the largest line she could have crossed. "Oh, good. You're here," she said casually. "We were going to text you, but things got busy." Daniel stared at her. Words didn't come right away. He felt like someone had knocked the wind out of him. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Mia picked up a throw pillow from his couch and examined the stitching. "We're moving in. Just for a while," she answered. "You're never here." The place is wasted sitting empty. And we really need somewhere peaceful after everything that's been happening. He blinked. You didn't ask. Mia shrugged. We're family, Daniel. We don't need to go through formalities. You know you wouldn't say no. That single sentence landed like a weight on Daniel's chest. You wouldn't say no. She said it so easily, so confidently, as if his choices didn't matter, as if his boundaries didn't exist, as if the beach house, his beach house, was something she had the right to claim. He looked at Greg, who gave an awkward smile, then went back to unpacking. Evan waved from the hallway like everything was normal. Daniel realized no one in the room saw anything wrong with what they were doing. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't miscommunication. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was entitlement. Mia walked over and put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Come on, be happy for us. This place will help us get back on our feet. And it's not like you're losing anything. Daniel stepped back. Her hand fell away. Yes, he said quietly. I am losing something. Mia frowned. What? Respect, he answered. She opened her mouth to argue, but he didn't stay long enough to hear it. He turned, walked out the door, and kept walking until the cool air cleared the fog in his mind. The betrayal hurt, but something else rose beneath it, a desire Daniel had never allowed himself to feel before. Not aggression, not fury, but a need to defend himself, to draw a line, to stop being treated like a safety net. A need for something close to revenge, though not the destructive kind people fear. Instead, the kind that teaches a lesson, the kind that forces change. He drove into town and sat in the car for several minutes, breathing slowly. His hands shook a little, but his thoughts had sharpened. His emotions didn't cloud him, they focused him. The first stop was the hardware store. He bought new locks. Strong ones. Then he visited the small local police station where he knew Officer Palmer, a calm, level-headed man who handled most of the community's small disputes. Daniel explained the situation factually, without anger. Palmer listened carefully and took notes, making sure everything Daniel said was documented properly. So you're saying they entered without permission? Palmer asked. Yes, Daniel said. And they are not tenants, not guests, and not owners. All right, Palmer said, nodding. We'll file this as an unauthorized entry report. If they attempt to stay after you've changed the locks, or if they try again, contact us immediately. Daniel thanked him and left. By the time he returned to the beach house, his family was gone, likely out for lunch, unaware of the decisions he had made. Their boxes remained scattered around the yard like pieces of a puzzle he had no interest in solving. He replaced the locks one by one. The clicks of the new mechanisms sounded like small victories. With each turn of the screwdriver, he felt something inside him shift into place, something that had been loose for years. As he finished the last lock, Daniel paused and looked at the house. It was still quiet, still peaceful, still beautiful. But now it felt different. It felt protected. Not because the doors were stronger, but because for the first time, he had chosen himself over everyone else. He sat on the front steps, listening to the ocean. His breathing slowed. The anger faded, replaced by a clear sense of purpose. He didn't know how his family would react when they discovered the locks were changed. He didn't know if things would get messy. But he did know one thing. This was the first step toward reclaiming his life. Not out of cruelty, not out of spite, but because kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all, it's surrender. And Daniel Reeves was done surrendering. Daniel barely slept that night. He lay awake listening to the waves, staring at the ceiling while the events replayed in his mind. His family had crossed a line, and a part of him felt strong for finally standing up. But another part felt heavy, unsure, and strangely guilty. He kept asking himself a question that didn't have an easy answer. Was he doing the right thing? Morning came fast. The sunlight crept through the curtains, sharp and bright, forcing him out of bed. He made coffee he barely tasted, paced the kitchen, and tried to sort through the emotions tangled inside him. The beach house was silent, but the silence didn't comfort him. It made his thoughts louder. He had changed the locks. He had alerted the police. He had drawn his boundary. But the weight of that decision pressed on him. He wasn't someone who liked conflict. All he ever wanted was peace. Yet peace was exactly what his family had taken from him. By noon, he knew they would return. They would discover the new locks, see the police report taped to the front door, and realize he wasn't playing along anymore. Daniel wasn't sure how they would react, but he prepared himself for anything. He didn't have to wait long. Around 1 o'clock, a car pulled into the driveway. Then another. He looked through the window and saw Mia climbing out, moving fast, her expression sharp. Greg followed, carrying a bag as if they still expected to unpack. Even Evan looked confused, glancing at the door like something was out of place. Daniel stepped outside before they reached the entrance. Mia stopped when she saw him. "What is this?" she snapped, pointing at the police notice on the door. "Why did you change the locks?" He kept his voice calm. "Because you came into my home without permission." Mia blinked, stunned for a second, then shook her head. "Daniel, you're being dramatic. We told you we needed a break. You know how hard things have been for us. You should have expected we'd come here." "You didn't ask," Daniel said. He kept repeating the truth in his mind, so he wouldn't crumble. "You didn't talk to me. You didn't check if I was comfortable. You just decided." Greg took a step forward, hands raised like he was trying to calm a stranger. "Look, man, we weren't trying to cause trouble. We figured you'd understand. You've always been the flexible one." Daniel felt the words hit like cold water. The flexible one. That was how they saw him. Not a person with boundaries, but someone who bent whenever they pushed. "I'm not flexible anymore," Daniel said quietly. Mia's face hardened. "So you called the police on us? Your own family?" "I didn't call them on you," he said. "I filed a report because you entered a property without permission. If anyone else had done it, I would have done the same." Mia threw her hands up. "We're not strangers." Daniel looked at her, really looked. She wasn't apologetic. She wasn't even trying to understand his side. She was angry because for the first time in years, Daniel wasn't falling in line. That realization hurt more than anything. He turned and walked back toward the deck. "I need space," he said. "And I need you to respect my home. That's all." "Daniel," Mia said, her voice rising, "you're acting like we stole something." "You did," he replied. "You tried to take my peace. That matters to me." Her mouth opened to argue again, but Daniel didn't stay to hear it. He went inside and locked the door. Not out of anger, but because he needed a barrier, physical and emotional. From inside. He heard their voices, first loud, then muffled, then fading as they walked back to the driveway. He didn't peek through the blinds. He didn't check if they were still there. He stood still in the silence, breathing slowly, trying to steady himself. Minutes passed before the car engine started. He waited until the sound disappeared before sitting down at the kitchen table, his hands trembling slightly. The confrontation had drained him. He felt powerful for defending his boundary, but also unsettled. Confronting family was harder than confronting strangers. The emotional weight hit deeper, lingered longer, and now a new emotion surfaced: doubt. He asked himself questions he hated. Was he too harsh? Should he have explained more gently? Should he have offered them a place somewhere else? Should he have been more patient? But every time doubt crept in, he remembered the image of them carrying boxes into his home without his knowledge. He remembered Mia's first words. You weren't using the place anyway. He remembered feeling invisible, as if his feelings didn't matter. He wasn't wrong. He knew that. But it still hurt that the day dragged on. He tried reading, but couldn't focus. He walked on the beach for an hour, but the calm waves didn't quiet his thoughts. When the sun began to set, he sat on the edge of the deck, watching the sky turn orange and pink. The colors stretched across the horizon, beautiful but distant, much like his thoughts. That was when a new idea entered his mind, not loud, not angry, but steady and clear. Revenge, not the dramatic kind. Not yelling, not breaking relationships, not plotting harm. No. His version would be different. Quiet, measured. A way to show his family that he wasn't their safety net anymore. A way to remind them he was a person with limits. But even as the idea formed, he felt a pull inside him. A warning. A question. Would revenge help him heal? Or would it only lead to more pain? He didn't know. But a part of him wanted to act. Another part wanted to forgive. And a third part, the one caught between them, felt tired and unsure. Meanwhile, miles away, Mia sat at her kitchen table, fuming. She complained to Greg, insisting Daniel had overreacted. She talked about how stressed she had been, how overwhelmed her family felt, how unfair life had been recently. In her mind, moving into the beach house wasn't wrong. It was a solution, a temporary escape, something she believed Daniel would eventually understand. But deep down, very deep down, there was a flicker of doubt in her too. A tiny voice asking if she had taken advantage of her brother's kindness for too long. She pushed the thought away, but it returned whenever the room got quiet. Evan asked if they were going back to the beach house. She hesitated before saying no. It wasn't theirs to return to unless Daniel allowed them. That truth stung more than she wanted to admit. Back at the beach house, Daniel thought about his next move. Should he distance himself? Should he have a long talk? Should he protect himself more? Or should he try to fix things before they broke completely? The conflict inside him grew. He felt anger and sadness tangled together. He felt protective of his peace, but also guilty for hurting the people he cared about. He felt strong one moment and unsure the next. As night fell, he sat with the lights off, listening to the waves. Their steady rhythm reminded him of something important. Life kept moving, even when relationships got complicated. Healing and hurting often lived side by side. He didn't make a decision that night. He simply let himself feel everything: anger, disappointment, love, fear, and the sharp sting of betrayal. His mind was a storm, and the storm had no clear ending yet. But one thing was certain: this chapter of his life wasn't over. The confrontation had only revealed the deeper problem. The years of unspoken resentment, uneven effort, and unbalanced love. All of it was rising to the surface now, demanding to be faced. The desire for revenge was still there, steady and tempting. But so was the desire for healing. Daniel stood at a crossroads, unsure which path to take. He closed his eyes, breathed slowly, and whispered to himself, "This isn't about the house. It's about respect." And somewhere in the darkness, he knew the real conflict wasn't between him and his family. It was inside him. Daniel woke up with a knot in his stomach. The conflict from the day before clung to him like a shadow he couldn't shake off. The beach house felt different now, heavier. Every room reminded him of the argument, of the hurt in Mia's voice, of the disbelief in Greg's eyes. He kept replaying the moment they saw the police report on the door, wondering if he could have handled things differently. But the thought that haunted him most was this: today wouldn't be quiet. He knew his family well enough to expect a follow-up. Mia wasn't the type to let a boundary stand without pushing back. And Daniel, despite everything, felt the weight of what was coming. He didn't want another fight, but he also wasn't ready to give in. He spent the morning pacing between windows, waiting for the inevitable dot. It came faster than he expected. Around 9, he heard the sound of tires on gravel. He stepped onto the deck, bracing himself. This time, Mia didn't come with just her husband. She arrived with 2 of Daniel's cousins and her mother, Evelyn. The sight made Daniel's stomach tighten. This wasn't a conversation. This was a family intervention. They walked toward him with determined steps, and he stood still, refusing to let fear or guilt push him backward. Mia spoke first. "We're talking about this today," she said. Her tone sharp but calmer than the day before. "We can't keep doing this." Daniel nodded. "All right. Let's talk." They gathered on the deck, standing in a loose circle. The ocean behind them made everything feel strangely peaceful, even though tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. Evelyn, gentle but firm, stepped forward. "Daniel, honey, we didn't mean to upset you. Your sister has been under a lot of stress. She just wanted a safe place to breathe." Daniel kept his voice steady. "I know she's stressed. I'm not angry about her needing help. I'm upset that no one asked me." Mia crossed her arms. "We didn't think we had to. You've always been there for us." Daniel's chest tightened. "That doesn't mean I don't have limits." Greg spoke, softer than Mia. "We didn't mean to cross a line. We honestly thought you'd say yes, like always." "That's the problem," Daniel said. "Everyone assumes I'll say yes. No one ever wonders if I want to." There was silence. Real silence. The kind that sits heavy because the truth has nowhere else to go. His cousin Aaron finally broke it. "Dude, she shouldn't have moved in without asking. That part's on her." Mia shot a glare. "You're not helping." Aaron shrugged. "I'm being honest." Evelyn touched Daniel's arm. "We just want to fix this. We're family. Family shouldn't be divided like this." Daniel looked at her, the person who always tried to keep everyone together. He felt the pull of guilt again, strong enough to make his hands shake. He wanted to give in. He wanted the tension to end. But he also remembered the fear he felt when he saw strangers and then realized they weren't strangers. They were his family, already treating his home like their own. "I'm not trying to divide us," Daniel said softly. "But I can't keep being the one who bends so everyone else feels comfortable." Mia's jaw tightened. "So what now? You want us to apologize? Beg you to let us stay?" "No," Daniel said. "I want you to understand that this place is mine. It's my peace. And you can't take it from me." His simple words landed harder than he expected. Mia's expression shifted, not just anger now, but something like hurt. Maybe even understanding. But before she could respond, a police car rolled up the driveway. Officer Palmer stepped out. Daniel hadn't called him. The officer had likely come to check on the situation after the report from the day before. His appearance added tension to the air instantly. Everyone stiffened. Palmer walked over calmly. "Morning. I'm just following up on yesterday's report. Everything all right here?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "We're talking things out." But Mia stepped forward quickly, her voice tense. "He called the police on us yesterday. His own family." Palmer raised a brow. It was a standard report for an unauthorized entry. No one's in trouble unless things escalate today. The word escalate hit the group like a warning bell. Mia looked torn between frustration and embarrassment. Greg gently pulled her back, whispering something Daniel couldn't hear. Palmer turned to Daniel. "Do you need me to stay?" Daniel hesitated. This was the moment. The crossroads. Revenge or peace. Punishment or healing. The moment he could choose to let anger guide him, or choose a different path. He looked at his sister. She wasn't furious anymore. She looked tired, confused, maybe even ashamed. For the first time, he saw her side, not to excuse what she did, but to understand the desperation behind it. "No," Daniel said finally. "We're fine. Thank you." Harmon nodded and left them to their conversation. The group stood in silence until the sound of the police car faded completely. Then Mia exhaled sharply. "Daniel, we messed up." Those 4 words, simple but sincere, hit him harder than anything else she had said in days. She rubbed her forehead, shaking her head. "I was stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly. I shouldn't have just moved in. I should have talked to you. I know that." Greg stepped beside her. "We took advantage of your kindness. We know it." Daniel didn't expect the apology. It softened something in him he didn't realize had hardened. Evelyn touched Mia's shoulder. "There's no excuse for assuming we could just take over the house." Aaron nodded in agreement. "Yeah, that was out of line." Daniel felt the tightness in his chest loosen a little. "I'm not asking for perfection. I just want respect. I want my voice to matter." Mia wiped at her eyes quickly, not wanting anyone to see. "It does. I'm sorry it didn't feel like it. I guess I got so used to you helping that I forgot you're allowed to say no." Daniel let out a long breath. "I'm allowed to say no. And I'm allowed to protect my peace." Mia nodded. "You are." Their mother stepped closer. "So what do you want to do now?" Daniel paused. This was the climax, the moment when revenge could take center stage. He could choose to cut them off. He could keep the distance. He could punish them for the hurt they'd caused. But as he looked at their faces, he understood something important. Revenge wouldn't fix anything. It would only leave deeper cracks. He wanted change, not distraction. "I want space," Daniel said. "I want you to ask before assuming anything. And I want this house respected." Mia nodded. "Of course." And Daniel added, "I want us to rebuild trust slowly. Not by moving in, not by forcing anything, but by actually talking." Greg exhaled with relief. "We can do that." Evelyn smiled softly. "We can rebuild." There was no dramatic hug, no sudden warmth, but the air felt clearer. The tension that had been choking him for days eased enough for him to breathe normally again. His family turned to leave. They walked back to their cars quietly, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Before opening her door, Mia looked back at him. "I'm really sorry," she said again. This time it sounded real. "I know," Daniel replied. "And I forgive you. Just don't do it again." She nodded and got into the car. When the last engine faded away, Daniel stood alone on the deck, watching the empty driveway. The air felt lighter. The sky seemed brighter. The house looked like his again, not because of the locks, but because of the boundary he had finally created. For the first time in a long time, he felt in control of his life. The storm wasn't completely gone, but its strongest winds had passed. He could finally see a path forward, one built on honesty, boundaries, and a kind of strength he never knew he had. The climax wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a choice. And Daniel chose himself.